Over 300 people have drowned or are feared dead after a boat with up to 500 African asylum seekers caught fire and sank off the Italian coast on Thursday. Rescuers pulled more bodies out of the waters overnight amid fears that the death toll could rise even more.
The migrants, mostly from Eritrea and Somalia, are said to have left from the Libyan port of Misrata before the ship sank off the Italian island of Lampedusa. Survivors told rescuers they set fire to a blanket on the boat to attract the attention of coast guards after their vessel began taking on water. But the fire spread quickly, sowing panic on board, which caused the boat to flip over and sink as people jumped into the sea to save themselves.
We were the first to save anyone. We were near the port, spending the night on our boat. We heard screams and we rushed to see what was going on. They were more like whispered cries, not screams. It seemed so far off and we weren't sure what to do. They seemed so far away. But on the off chance, we set out and found a terrible situation. 150 to 200 people in the water.
Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta called the incident an immense tragedy, and the government declared a national day of mourning on Friday and a minute of silence to be held in all schools. Alfano also called for more assistance from the European Union to deal with the sharp increase in refugee arrivals.
The skipper has been arrested. He is a 35-year-old Tunisian who was expelled from Italy last April. We want a big battle in Europe to obtain a marine patrol off our coast. This is the border of Europe through the Frontex.
The EU's Home Affairs Commissioner also called on EU countries to do more to take in refugees, which she said would help reduce the number of perilous Mediterranean crossings. Lampedusa is one of the main entry points into the European Union for asylum seekers crossing from North Africa or the Eastern Mediterranean. Migrate Europe, a network of immigration charities, estimates some 17,000 migrants have died at sea trying to reach Europe in the past 20 years, crossing on rickety fishing boats or dinghies. Robert Nagela, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
Let's get to more details on what happened in Italy and, of course, the wider policy implications of that. We're now joined in studio by the United Nations Human Rights Commission spokesperson, Kitty McKinsey. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. How serious is the situation in Italy?
It's extremely serious, and it's been serious for a few years. Our colleagues at the UN Refugee Agency have seen every year thousands and thousands of refugees risking their lives, often losing their lives, trying to get to this tiny island of Lampedusa, which is part of Italy, but it's actually closer to Africa. In recent years, in fact this year, a lot of the normal avenues that they take across the Gulf of Aden to Yemen have been cut off, and they're increasingly going, instead of going north, they're going west through Sudan to Libya, and they jump onto these small boats. And just trying to imagine for yourself how desperate you would have to be to get into one of these small boats that you know is not seaworthy, and you know that you're risking your life, but you still, in order to flee persecution, to flee war, to flee human rights abuses, sometimes just to try to get a better economic life, you're willing to risk your life. You have to be incredibly desperate to do that.
But then again, if this problem has been in existence for a while, the other flip side of that is that we've seen a hardening of positions, especially in Western European economies, towards immigration. Far-right parties from pretty much, well, the Nordic countries all the way down to Greece are gaining quite a bit of traction. Doesn't that make your work as UNHCR a lot harder from a policy standpoint?
You know, I think now that we have all these bodies lying on the shore of Lampedusa, I think at this very moment it's not the time to talk politics. I think we need some human sympathy. I think this is probably actually going to engender a lot of human sympathy. I think when people see tiny babies who have died because their parents were trying to flee persecution, if you look at the people who died in this tragedy yesterday in Lampedusa, so far as we know, every single one of them except for one has been Eritrean, which points to the fact that they are trying to escape forced conscription. I think this shows that they are fleeing human rights abuses, they are fleeing persecution. They are not what we love to say economic migrants, as if somehow economic migrants do not deserve our sympathy. These are people whose human rights are not being respected. They're fleeing persecution. This shows that we need to work in order to respect human rights. And UNHCR is working with countries. And by the way, this is not only a European problem, it's not only an African problem, it is a worldwide problem.
From a policy standpoint, though, with regard especially to this trend, because you have said fairly clearly this has been going on for quite a while, what sort of work has UNHCR been doing over the years to at least tackle this?
Well, everywhere that we work, of course, we do advocacy, which is not a very sexy word, but we try to make sure that good asylum systems are in place. We try to make sure that countries protect the rights of immigrants. We try to prevent any rollback of the asylum systems. I think there's a much bigger question, though. Besides keeping the asylum in place, the places people go, we need to make sure that countries are protecting human rights in the countries that people come from. And I think it's not only the work of the UN Refugee Agency, there are a lot of other organizations, development agencies, that need to work to make conditions right in the countries people leave so that they do not feel they have to leave. I have stood on the beach in Bosaso and talked to people who were getting into those boats and said to them, why are you getting into the boat? Some people who've been on that journey up to 15 times, like it's a shuttle, and said to them, why are you getting into this boat? You know you might be killed. And with the most dead eyes you have ever seen in the world, they say, I'm going to die here for sure anyway. Why should I not risk my life? So there are a lot of other people besides the UN Refugee Agency who can help to make life better in these countries so that people do not have to leave in the first place.
Indeed. Kitty McKinsey from UNHCR, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Right, let's move on to another story here in Kenya, where a popular Muslim cleric, Sheikh Ibrahim Amor, was on Thursday night gunned down by unknown assailants in the Kenyan coastal city of Mombasa. He died along with 3 other men while heading home from a mosque linked in the past to Somali Islamist militants. Now, their vehicle was sprayed with bullets, killing 4 or 5 occupants in it. The Muslim cleric succeeded the ferry Sheikh Abu Drogo, who was killed in similar circumstances in August last year, leading to days of deadly riots in Mombasa. Amor's death follows the killing of more than 60 people in an attack in a Nairobi shopping mall claimed by Somalia's militia Al-Shabaab. In a related story, the chair of the African Union Commission, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, has branded the terror attack on Nairobi's Westgate Mall that killed more than 60 people as horrific. She says religion must not and never be used to divide the people in Africa.
It is worrying that something so horrific can happen in the name of religion. But let me say, you know, Africa has had diverse religious beliefs. Islam has been part and parcel of Africa for centuries. And Muslims, Christians, and other religions have coexisted in harmony and tolerance and understanding and respecting each other's beliefs. And we hope that Africa will not abandon that approach.
Right, 10 minutes into the hour, we're taking a short break. Here's what's coming up next. Fixing Egypt. The EU's top diplomat calls for an inclusive approach to resolving the country's political crisis.
This world is an amazing place, and we put in structures and people and empower people. I think to realize a dream, and on the African continent especially, you know.
Young and enthusiastic. We'll have a wrap-up of the voices from the One Young World Summit on November.
The daring and savagery of new terror attacks in Kenya and Nigeria pose fresh security challenges for Africa and the wider international community.
We shall not relent on the war on terror.
Excesses of Boko Haram must stop.
In the wake of this threat, Africa's economic gains are in danger. Is it time for global war on terror focused on Africa? This week in Talk Africa.
Welcome back. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Catherine Ashton, has wrapped up her two-day visit to Egypt. While there, she met the interim president, Ibrahim Amor, and she stressed that the EU doesn't want to interfere in Egyptian politics, but she urged Egyptians to seek an inclusive transitional plan. With the details, here's CCTV's Adel Mahrouki.
This is Ashton's third visit to Cairo since Morsi was ousted. It was full of meetings, but no breakthroughs. The EU and the Muslim Brotherhood members say they agreed to keep foreign powers out of the political conflict in Egypt.
It's very important for everyone to understand that I don't come here to interfere or to mediate.
There are no initiatives from the EU. We have expressed our rejection on any foreign influence on the situation in Egypt. Many criticized us for these meetings, saying they don't make any difference, but it would be impolite for us to reject the invitation.
But some analysts are not convinced. They insist the mediation and talks on the solution were inevitable.
An important part of the EU meeting is to try to convince the Muslim Brotherhood to join the political transition. The reason Catherine Ashton is here is because the EU is readjusting their position to the new transition in Egypt. They want to guarantee that Egypt is moving towards the democracy they want, to have new calibers rise to the scene that will guarantee EU's existence in the region.
Ashton met the president, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, the Coptic Pope and many politicians. But her meeting with the Defense Minister Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was the longest of all. And regarding the calls from some Egyptians for Sisi to run for president, Ashton showed no objection at all.
It's up to individuals to decide if they're going to be candidates in the election or not. Egyptian people will decide if they want to be candidates, and people will decide who they vote for.
Catherine Ashton's visit didn't make any difference in the ongoing Egyptian conflict. It only showed that Europe stands at equal distances from all sects, preserving its interest with whoever wins the next elections. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Away from politics, this is the second day of the One Young World Conference in Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, over 1,000 young people are in the South African city for that summit to identify solutions to some of the most pressing global issues they face. We're bringing you special coverage throughout the three-day conference. CCTV's Guy Henderson is there.
And one of the themes that's really been hit home by all of the speakers on day one is the extent to which this young generation can, in a way that no generation has really before it, implement social and political change from the ground up, simply because of the extent to which it's informed and interconnected. And that's a theme we're likely to see again in the sessions here on Friday. Number one, we've got CCTV's James Chow, who's hosting a debate and discussion on the problem of HIV/AIDS. We've also got the CEO of Barclays, who's once again discussing that issue of making business more sustainable. One of the things that really stood out on Thursday as well was one of the young South African leaders attending this conference sitting on stage in front of 1,000 or so delegates being interviewed by Kofi Annan and Bob Geldof.
You know, what was the first obstacle you met? Was it bewilderment? Was it derision? Was it a lack of support? Were people just laughing at you?
You know, I think when you're trying to do something different, because in Nkulu Free it's not a political party and it's not a civil society organization.
So pretty impressive, and there's many other delegates just like Eric and his colleague Sizwe amongst the delegates here in Johannesburg. You'll be able to hear more about those two specifically in just a few hours on Africa Live. We'll be honing in on their talents and profiling them on Africa Live on Friday evening. Guy Henderson, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Now, key speakers who are attending that conference do include Mohammed Yunus, the banker and economist who won the Nobel Peace Prize for pioneering the microfinance movement. He spoke to CCTV's James Chow in Johannesburg.
You're here at One Young World and you've told global youth to allow your imaginations to blossom. You said we should write social fiction. What does this mean, though?
The world will be created from the ideas, from the imaginations that we have, particularly for the young generation, what kind of imagination they have. Because we can only create out of imagination. We cannot create things which we do not imagine.
You talk about social business in your book, Creating a World Without Poverty, but in reality this is a world with an economic slowdown. Given that framework, is social business less relevant, or what would you say is the opportunity now?
I think social business is more relevant now because we are all frustrated with the kind of economy we have. Nobody is happy. Look at Europe. They're suffering from the unemployment and the Euro crisis and all that kind of thing. All we are saying, human creative power can solve all those problems, provided we put them in a business format. If you do it in a donor format, okay, I'll give you money to solve a problem, another problem. It can work for a while, but then you run out of money because you need fresh money to do that. But if you do it in a business way, business money can continue within that. And that's what we call social business. It's a non-dividend company to solve human problems.
One of the tragic stories of this year was Sava, when a garment factory came down and over 1,000 people died. Everyone looked to you to what you would say about this tragedy in your own country. And you used that opportunity to call for a minimum wage, even something as little as 50 cents, which you say is about twice as much as what people get paid right now. Has there been any progress since the spring to now?
Yes, there are a lot of progress, I see, but when the incident happened, it's such a traumatic experience to see. So this is something I thought is an opportunity to shake up everybody's thinking about future of the garment industry. And we said it should not happen again. Let's promise that.
Professor Yunus, you won the Nobel Prize, and then all these allegations started appearing in your own life. Throughout this period, though, you've remained strong. You've always smiled. How do you continue being inspired in your own life?
Don't worry about it. As long as you're on the right path, move right ahead. Don't worry about who says what, because then you get bogged down. There's no time to get bogged down. Move forward. You remain true to your mission and make sure you're clean, you're transparent, and continue that. And nobody will bother you anymore.
10:18 GMT. Let's switch gears and move on to business.